impending ecocide and extinction of the human species. We must, in wave after wave, carry out nonviolent acts of civil disobedience to shut down the capitals of the major industrial countries, crippling commerce and transportation, until the ruling elites are forced to publicly state the truth about climate catastrophe, implement radical measures to halt carbon emissions by 2025, and empower an independent citizens committee to oversee the termination of our 150-year binge on fossil fuels. If we do not do this, we will face mass death. The British-based group Extinction Rebellion has called for nonviolent acts of civil disobedience on April 15th in capitals around the world to reverse what they call our one-way track to extinction.
Next tonight to the historic flood emergency playing out in the heartland. At least 2 people are dead, and the National Guard and state police are reporting nearly 300 rescues in Nebraska alone. Roads ripped away as several rivers rise to record levels, including the Missouri, amid rapid snowmelt and ice jams. Several communities are cut off tonight, and Sam Champion has more.
Tonight, 2 dead, 1 missing, and hundreds rescued as historic and devastating flooding continues to overwhelm residents from Nebraska to Wisconsin. The raging rivers intensified by rapid snowmelt and ice jams. Hardest hit, Nebraska. Outside of Omaha, these images reveal water for miles. Much of Waterloo now cut off to the outside world. The Elkhorn River cresting at a new record, beating the old high water mark by more than 5 feet, blocking all routes in and out of the town, its residents completely trapped. This weekend, the National Guard using helicopters to rescue more than 100 people, some from the roofs of their homes. David Perkins, just one of those thankful he was pulled to safety.
I was petrified. I didn't know how fast it was coming up.
Authorities saying bridges and roads like this one are unsafe, even after the water recedes.
In situations like that, you try to grab the essential things and pictures and things like that.
Nebraska's governor characterizing the destruction as unbelievable. Look at this highway cracked in half, and this is what's left of the Spencer Dam after being destroyed by the roaring water. That breach releasing an 11-foot wall of water, devastating 3 surrounding counties. Buildings like this cafe in Niobrara completely wiped out. The flood damage now extending into Iowa. These homes in Fremont County underwater as the flooding continues.
Water everywhere you look in some cases. Sam Champion joins us live now. Sam, what's going to happen with all that water?
It's a big story the rest of the week as well, Tom. So let's show everybody where the warnings are tonight and get them ready. The worst warnings showing them right around Omaha right now. Follow the Missouri River down, and we'll show you that water that drains south around St. Joseph. We're expecting that to go to major flood stage by Tuesday. Now move into Iowa because a lot of this water will drain into the Mississippi River. Mississippi already at flood stage. Let's go to St. Louis. That's at flood stage. It will stay at flood stage until the end of the week. We don't think the crest will happen until sometime near the end of the week, Tom. So all of that still stays in flooding for most of the week.
A major weather event for so many Americans. All right, Sam, thank you.
According to a report by Reuters, U.S. border agents have seized approximately 1 million pounds of pork from China over suspicions it might contain African swine flu disease. Over the past week, federal agents reportedly seized the pork shipments in New York. Anthony L. Bucci, public affairs specialist at U.S. Customs and Border Protection, reportedly said the seizure was in an effort to battle the spread of African swine fever. Bucci reportedly added that the investigation was ongoing and that agents from the U.S. Department of Agriculture were working on the issue.
According to a report by HuffPost, on Friday, a powerful bomb cyclone tore through the Midwest, bringing extreme flooding to parts of Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin. The National Weather Service reportedly issued a flash flood emergency order on early Friday, affecting areas west of Omaha after a dike on the Platte River in the town of Valley failed. Several levees reportedly failed across the state, forcing thousands to evacuate. At least 1 person was reportedly killed by the flooding, and another has been reported missing. According to the Omaha World Herald, on Thursday, several firefighters were injured when their boat capsized during attempted rescue at the town of Arlington.
The concern for us is that the water will come inside the home. Plus, it erodes the soil around the home, and it's still continuing to erode. The children sometimes slip and fall, so we are paving the place with sand.
Almost 1 million Rohingya refugees live here, having fled Myanmar during the government crackdown in August of 2017. This will be their 3rd monsoon season away from home.
One of the main concerns of the monsoon season are landslides, and that's because many of these huts have been built on slopes, and you can see that sandbags have been used here to try and hold the ground. But when the rains come, you will see torrential water pouring down these slopes. Many people will tell you that these huts, which are made out of bamboo and tarpaulin, will stand little chance.
But we're told reinforcement work has taken place on vulnerable areas, and a whole new camp has been built with stronger homes. The ground too is getting extra help. These are called soil retention walls. All this in an effort to prevent landslides and allow the expected deluge of water to drain off quickly. Sanjida was recently moved to this hut, and she shares the space with her husband and 6 children.
Our previous home had tarpaulin, which was blown away during a storm. We fixed it with a double layer. It was also located in low, flat land, but this one is on a higher ground and much more protected.
There are many aid agencies operating here, and the size of the camps means that this is more like a city, but without the resources to cope with the same number of people.
In the last year, we relocated 26,000 refugees who are especially vulnerable in their places, and that was a good measure. This year, we hope that the number will much smaller, because we have strengthened the shelters here. We have 1 more year of experience, and that's why we are kind of optimistic.
What is certain is that the rains will come. High winds will pound these huts, and the ground will turn wet and muddy. But what's less certain is what will happen to all these people
Anti-government demonstrators openly defied President Daniel Ortega's ban on protesting on Saturday. It was the first time people had taken to the streets since October, when they suffered a violent backlash, and once again they were met with heavy-handed police tactics. Protesters are calling on the government to end the repression and are demanding the release of all political prisoners.
We're fighting for the freedom of our political prisoners. They're not criminals, just normal people who want to push out our corrupt leader, Daniel Ortega.
Journalists covering the demonstrations were also attacked as protesters sought shelter in malls and houses. Dozens of demonstrators and members of the press were arrested. The unrest began a year ago with students demonstrating against a national pension reform plan. The government response left at least 360 people dead, scores injured, and more than 700 imprisoned. 2 weeks ago, President Daniel Ortega renewed calls for a national dialogue, facing increasing international pressure and an economic crisis. On Friday, he released 50 prisoners as a show of goodwill, joining 100 others let out in late February, but they will remain under house arrest. People cheered as detainees were driven away from La Modelo high-security prison, but the mothers of those still behind bars couldn't control their desperation. "We want them free and healthy," this mother cried. At least 570 people remain behind bars. Some analysts believe the releases are necessary for real talks to happen.
It's clear that those released keep having a sword over their head. The trials continue and the charges remain in effect. But it's a first step. In any case, this process will be long and difficult.
But with dissent remaining criminalized and heavily repressed on the streets of Managua, it will be difficult for any real negotiations to start. Alessandro Ampietti, Al Jazeera.
According to Reuters, workers began cleaning up the Champs-Élysées in Paris on Sunday after rioters ransacked stores and restaurants in a new flare-up of violence linked to the Yellow Vest protest movement. President Emmanuel Macron returned to Paris late on Saturday for a crisis meeting with ministers, at which he ordered decisions to be taken rapidly, quote, so this doesn't happen again. Cleaners swept up broken glass, while shop owners boarded up smashed windows after the continuing unrest in central Paris.
A harsh late winter storm broadsided a vast swath of the United States agriculture industry this week. Heavy snow closed roads and buried cattle, while excessive rain flooded Midwest farm fields. Recovery from the storm is expected to take days or weeks, if not longer. The floods have posed challenges for ranchers as well as cattle feedlot operators who have already struggled through a long winter.
The voice of support for Catalonian independence has never been heard this clearly before on the streets of Madrid. Tens of thousands came to join the rally, including the Catalan president, Quim Torra, showing solidarity with his 12 imprisoned colleagues. The charges: rebellion, sedition and embezzlement. Some of them faced 25 years in prison for organising the independence referendum in the autumn of 2017. Hundreds of police were deployed in the Spanish capital to make sure extreme right-wing groups were kept well away from the march.
I think there are political prisoners because they have just made what their political program said.
Once again, we are here to give voice to the people who are unjustly imprisoned for letting us vote on the 1st of October. The least we could do is be here for them, to show our face.
Among the many banners being displayed, this one said, when injustice becomes the law, then rebellion becomes necessary. But under the Spanish constitution, the referendum was illegal.
The watchword phrase of this demonstration is that self-determination is not a crime, it's a right, and that democracy is about making decisions. It's a huge show of support in the centre of Madrid for the 12 Catalonian leaders who are on trial in the Supreme Court.
Spain is holding a snap election next month. The Catalan question is set to overshadow the political debate, polarizing opinion here. It's a wound that will not heal. David Chater, Al Jazeera, Madrid.
Well, every day China edges closer to overtaking the United States as the world's richest country. But just because they're getting stronger economically doesn't mean the Chinese people are more free. They're not. China is still imprisoning its Muslim population in the West. Ordinary Chinese still lose access to travel or education if the government says they have poor social credit. And now a hacker has discovered a bizarre Chinese database that evaluated millions of Chinese women on whether they were, quote, breed ready. Gordon Chang is a columnist, author of The Coming Collapse of China. Can't come too soon. He joins us tonight. Gordon, thanks very much for coming on. What does breed ready mean, and why would the Chinese government be assessing that?
Well, breed ready means that they are able to breed children. And the reason why is because China has declining demography. You know, if you start to look at some of the statistics, they're really frightening. So, for instance, last year, their birth rate fell about 12%, perhaps to the lowest rate in the history of the People's Republic, going back to 1949. And we're seeing that the workforce has already topped out. The population as a whole will top out soon. China's officials are just in a panic.
So they're identifying women who are breed ready, but then what do they do with that information? Is there going to be a coercive breeding program in China?
There very possibly could be, because some Chinese officials are now talking about having a two-child policy, which is not a maximum 2 children, but they're talking about requiring couples to have 2 children. Now, of course, China's not there yet. But you can see where they're going, largely because they've been taken by surprise by collapsing demography. They shouldn't have been. People have been warning Chinese officials about this for the last 15 years, but they've sort of sloughed off the warnings. But, you know, a couple of years ago, they really started to see the consequences of declining demography.
But, I mean, I've been hearing from Democrats in this country who are very concerned about having any kids because of global warming. It sounds like the Chinese aren't as concerned about global warming as we are.
No, and largely because every social problem, every economic problem they have, almost all of them are made worse by declining demography. And the Chinese leaders start to know this. And that's starting with their economy, because, you know, they grew during what was called the demographic dividend years. That was expanding workforce. Now, the workforce since 2011 has started to get smaller, and it's gotten smaller fast.
So we have the same demographic problems here, obviously, and so does Western Europe, declining below replacement rate. We just import new people from the developing world. Has it occurred to the Chinese to do that?
No, the Chinese don't want to do that because they have a system, and then basically it's based on racial superiority, where they do view the rest of the world in inferior terms. And, Tucker, on demography, within maybe 3 years, for the first time in at least 300 years, maybe all of recorded history, China is not going to be the world's most populous society. The world's most populous society will be India, and the Chinese both disdain the Indians because of this racial superiority view, but also they fear India. So people are concerned that China is seeing a closing window of opportunity and will lash out on that Himalayan border.
The March for Brexit assembled in driving rain on the coastal path near Sunderland, the industrial city in England's northeast which voted overwhelmingly to leave the EU. Confusion tipped briefly into chaos as pro-Brexit figurehead Nigel Farage arrived, surrounded by security and followed by pro-EU demonstrators. The marchers believe the principle of Brexit is in jeopardy, and even Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal falls short.
If you see what's happened in Parliament this week, we may well not be leaving the EU. And this is a march. If politicians think they can walk all over us, we're going to march back and tell them they can't. Simple as that.
Well done, Nigel. Great orator, great statesman.
We want to leave on the 29th of March with a clean Brexit, and if that means going to WTO terms, that's what we'd very much like to do.
I think the government have just let everybody down. I think whether you're a Remainer or a Brexiteer, the government just haven't fulfilled their mandate.
Well, I'm here for my grandchildren, hoping to secure a Brexit and leaving Europe for them, because I think the future will be far brighter.
Nigel Farage typically is surrounded by cameras in that melee there. The rest of the marchers are strung right along this coastal path. There's a long way to go before they reach London, and how many of them actually get that far remains to be seen. The march is being tailed by 2 mobile billboards paid for by an anti-Brexit campaign. At the way station at Seaham, there was an angry confrontation with 2 peaceful pro-EU campaigners.
Because we are proud of being British.
He wants his 50.
You're not.
The route took the marchers past Jan Armstrong's hair salon in the village of Hordern. In the chair, a customer named Lever, who actually voted to remain.
The rest of the world must just think that we are pretty incompetent. Our representatives don't know what they're doing, and although Theresa May is trying her best, I feel, she's just in a very weak position.
But Jan voted leave and would again.
Everybody's just tired, and it's a bit embarrassing, really. And I think, to be fair, I think a lot of people just don't know what's going on.
It's not clear whether the marchers will arrive in London to see Brexit being delivered or being delayed. But for now, at least, in this Brexit heartland, they are on sure ground. Paul Brennan, Al Jazeera, Sunderland.
Those on blood pressure medication must take caution. Recent reports have been emerging stating that certain blood pressure medications can cause cancer. This has resulted in the recall of many blood pressure medications on the market. According to UPI, another 43 lots of the blood pressure and heart failure drug losartan have been recalled due to the detection of a possible carcinogen in the tablets. Legacy Pharmaceuticals Packagin has announced it is recalling 43 lots of losartan due to the presence of trace amounts of NMBA, which can potentially cause cancer in humans. This is just the latest in a series of recalls of losartan tablets due to potentially cancer-causing impurities.
According to CNN, on St. Patrick's Day, Chicago resident Tom Rowan will do the same thing he has done that day for the past 56 years. He'll make the Chicago River run green. Rowan, a 75-year-old retired police officer, is the man behind the famous Windy City ritual. The city's St. Patrick's Day parade is world-renowned, primarily because of its unique tradition of dyeing the river green. The Chicago River was first dyed green in 1962, and Tom's father, Tom Sr., was first tasked with the job along with his partner Michael Butler, and their families still hold the tradition. President of Chicago's Chamber of Commerce, Jack Levin, told CNN the Rowans and the Butlers represent Chicago's emphasis on family. They passed this